Hi, everybody. My name's Robin Walsh. I'm a scholar of New Testament and early Christianity, and I'm part of the Bart Ehrman team. Today, I'm going to answer a question I was asked this week about whether or not Mark is the most mysterious gospel. The answer, I think, is yes, and there are a couple of reasons I think this. Number one is probably what you would expect, which is that Mark has a tendency to have very short passages that are shrouded, let's just call it, in mystery. He doesn't like to do a lot of explanation. The narrative kind of jumps around here and there. And imagine you're somebody who's reading the Gospel of Mark for the first time, and maybe you don't know that much about Jesus or that much about his story. And, a lot of scholars think Mark is the first gospel. So imagine this is the first gospel circulating either within a religious community or outside of it. You're going to have a lot of questions. Why was a demon put into some pigs? Why was the woman in chapter 5 healed by just touching his garment? Who is this guy who suddenly becomes God's son as soon as he's baptized? And the original ending of Mark has the women at the tomb afraid of what they are seeing when they see the empty tomb and running away and saying nothing to anyone. I mean, the whole thing is just kind of, some of you have heard me say before, like kind of imagine Twilight Zone music, right? It's just all over the place. There was a scholar in the early 20th century named William Wrede, who was trying to capture this idea that I just described. It's kind of all over the place. You don't entirely feel grounded. It doesn't go out of its way to explain things to you. In addition to that, the disciples are even a little bit clueless in this gospel, and he called this the Messianic Secret. So often when people talk about the Gospel of Mark or talk about its Christology, they will reference this idea that there is a Messianic secret, that Jesus seems to be shrouded in mystery throughout the text. Indeed, he tries to more or less not confirm, some might even say conceal his identity throughout the text when he performs a wondrous deed, and people seem to be bewildered or confused by what they are seeing and have questions about who Jesus is, again, including the disciples, who seem to be just kind of dumbfounded by what they are witnessing. Jesus often kind of tells people to be quiet or tells them to shut up or not to say anything about what they've seen. He described that, Wrede, as the Messianic Secret, and that has really stuck. I think that there can be some problems with the idea of the Messianic Secret. I don't think it entirely considers Mark as a literary product in the way that I would like us to consider it. In a way, it resembles more to me something like paradoxography, which is a name we give to certain texts in antiquity that tend to like to tell stories about wondrous or miraculous things. And they're usually kind of quick snippets of information. That has, I think, a few more parallels with what you're seeing in the Gospels, both in terms of the way Mark constructs his narrative, in terms of the content, which we've been talking about, the miracles, the strange events, the lack of description. You have to kind of fill in those blanks. I also think paradoxography helps us to think about this text because it's in a quote-unquote far-flung place, a kind of, I hate to use this term, but exotic place in the empire from the perspective of Rome. So remember, we're talking about West Asia, the Eastern Mediterranean, and Judea is occupied by the Romans. And in the first century with the Jewish War, it's a territory that people probably had a lot of curiosity about. You have things like the Judea capta coin, and maybe we'll show an image here, depicting Judea as a captive woman, as somebody who's been essentially, taken over and vanquished by the Roman Empire. You also have things like the Arch of Titus commemorating the victory of the sack of the temple and the subsequent triumph in Rome. So the temple in Jerusalem. And then even the thing we call the Colosseum, the Flavian amphitheater, was built from the spoils of the destruction of that temple in Judea, in Jerusalem. So people are thinking about these things. There's already curiosity about Jewish holy books because they are so old. And then you hear about this war from the Roman imagination. This is a place, Judea, the Galilee, where those kinds of mysterious, miraculous things could probably happen. So is Mark our most mysterious gospel? I mean, compared to the other canonical ones, it's pretty mysterious. I guess maybe John could give it a run for its money, but I'll leave it up to Hugo Mendez to comment on. But yeah, I think yes. I'll say yes on that one. All right, so if you're curious about this, you want to know more about the Bible or kind of hash these things out, discuss them, check out bartehrman.com/BSA learning. There's again a community of people where you can have discussion boards to talk about these kinds of things, have these sorts of debates, watch videos from people like Hugo Mendez and others debating different aspects of the text or giving you a perspective on scholarly opinion on these kinds of matters. I hope you'll check it out. There's always a 14-day free trial. And keep your questions coming. Thanks.